To encourage more and more people to join them in Iraq and Syria, the extremist groups didn't confine themselves to speeches. They've been uploading countless promotional videos about their terrorist activities, all under the cloak of Islam and Jihad. To justify their heinous crimes, they offer an unorthodox interpretation of Islamic texts in a way that suits their inhumane actions.
When the Wahhabi movement gained momentum in Tunisia, they managed to tap into the youth's religious sentiments, since on the one hand, their emotions were running very high, but on the other hand, they didn't have the knowledge and perception to immunize their sentiments against homicidal Wahhabi teachings of murder and war. The Wahhabis made use of some authentic hadith, such as the one that says at the end of time there would happen many battles and great wars in the land of Levant, which is Damascus today. Authentic as these hadith might be, but the scholars agree that such wars would happen at the end of time, and right before the Judgment Day, and definitely not at this period of time. The Wahhabi leaders abused such hadith, and told our youth that if you go to war now, you would make the majority of the martyrs, and on the Day of Judgment, you will enter heaven alongside prophets and saints.
For a while after his disappearance, no one had any information about him. Then we heard that police had arrested him somewhere in the governorate of Kasserine. People would say that he got arrested in Shambi mountains, where he was aiding the Takfiri militants. After this, I somehow returned to the warmth of my family. They were the closest people to me. I continued my religious studies and got to know about more aspects of my religion. My family also encouraged me to learn more about the things I was unaware of.
In the end, Taysir's parents introduced their daughter to Islamic scholars, who helped her have a better understanding of Islam. On the other hand, Armani was deprived of such a chance because her family were not aware of what was going on. Now her fate is veiled in mystery.
Once, members of a charity foundation came here and said that they were willing to instruct girls in beneficial crafts. I told my sister Armani that I wanted to end this joblessness and learn something useful. The teacher of the foundation was Lebanese.
A female Lebanese teacher had come here. She wanted to teach girls beneficial things. They had told everyone to ask their sisters and relatives to join them in the classes. My sisters informed me and I thought it was a good idea. It was of course better than sitting at home doing nothing and whining, so I gave them the permission.
So this seemed to be a good idea at first. She would get out of the house and she started working with them. Gradually, her behavior changed. She wasn't the same even with me. We weren't talking like before either. She had changed a lot.
She changed the way she dressed and changed her hijab. She was not like before, although she used to observe hijab, but now she had added the niqab to it. I was surprised and decided to talk to her. She talked to me of religion and various aspects of it. She talked to me about things of which I had no complete knowledge of, things she was not willing to discuss with anyone else. I didn't try to limit her, but talked to a religious scholar about her. After a while, the sheikh told me that he had seen my sister in a religious gathering attended by many who hold different views from ours.
After a while, she started asking us not to watch TV. She would say that watching it is forbidden. She was no longer interested in sitting down and having a chat with me. She was unwilling to talk to anyone in the family. Whenever a guest came over, she would cover her face from him. She was totally uninterested in chatting to anyone or talking in general.
I felt like they had kidnapped a girl from amongst us. Everyone we knew would ask after her. Neighbors could no longer see her, and she had no intention to socialize with them anymore. Sometimes, some people would come to me and would say, "Man, be careful. Your sister is mingling with the wrong crowd and questionable individuals."
She would bring me CDs from where I don't know. Did they give her these CDs, or did she obtain them by herself? I don't know. The CDs were on the subject of jihad. She would say that a woman should participate in jihad. Sometimes she would talk about Afghanistan, Somalia, and jihad.
Well, in fact, I should say I stood up against her and told her that this had to stop. I forbade her to leave the house, but the result was that after a few days, we could no longer find the girl.
In June 2013, Armeni left the house and never returned again. We didn't find her. After an anxious period of not having any news and not finding any trace, we finally received this text from her, saying that she was in Turkey and getting ready to join the so-called jihad in Syria.
I could never ever believe that my little sister would one day do such a thing. She was raised in the warmth of a big family. We were both raised with the same standards and the same culture, but we didn't know her. We could no longer recognize our little sister. She was like a daughter to me. She would never do anything without telling me, even the smallest things like leaving the house. She would let me know. But suddenly, we're utterly surprised by her travel to a foreign country. This is just beyond me.
To collect some information about my sister, I talked to some people who had returned from Syria. I heard about Ines, who was injured and hospitalized. I went to visit her in the hospital. She was in a pathetic condition.
She came to visit me at the hospital. She came to collect some information about her sister, who just like me had set off for the so-called jihad in Syria, but no one had any news of her up until then.
Ines, a Tunisian woman, was living a normal life when her husband converted to Wahhabism. Then, along with her husband, she was forced to go to Syria, where after a while she had to sleep with many men in the name of the so-called sexual jihad. Now, Ines is home with a baby in her belly, without knowing who the father of her child is. She tells us about her harrowing experiences.
We got on the car and travelled all the way as far as the border between Tunisia and Libya. At the border, we met with some other guys. I realized that my husband knew them very well. We accompanied them. In Tunisia, things were normal because I knew the guys who were there. They were from the same community that I attended. But then, there were these new guys. At the Libyan borders, we got into SUVs with some new guys. They got in first, and then I hopped in. I was almost unable to see anything. We followed the borders all the way up till Benghazi port. We stopped on that route for 2 or 3 times and not more. Each time we would rest for a little and then resume our travel. At each stop, we would be met by some guys who were waiting for us. They would welcome us. In Libya, I felt neither worries nor any pressures that came with a warring situation. It could be because of the fact that I was placed at the very back of the car and I had no understanding of what went on outside. The other reason was that each of our stops was at a perfectly chosen locale where things were calm and peaceful. People would welcome us with open arms and smiling faces. There was no problem and I could feel nothing wrong at that place and that time. When we arrived in Benghazi, I was met with another situation. People whom I knew back in Tunisia were now completely changed. I was now faced with a fully armed regiment, a full regiment who were waiting for only 2 women. What was even more painful for me was the fact that my husband knew almost each and every one of them. In those moments, my mind was incapable of analyzing that this was a full and complete network. I was terrified. I was even scared of my husband. My faith had been in God and in my husband, but now I was afraid of him, since I could not believe that he had relations with Takfiri militants. We were in Benghazi merely for 48 hours or less, and then we were taken to the airport to send us to Turkey. The only thing that I would like to remember from after leaving Tunisia and before entering Syria is the time that I spent in Istanbul. Because there I was quite like an ordinary woman, a newlywed who was taken to a foreign trip, an expedition by her husband. This was in addition to the fact that I had never left Tunisia before. It was only me and my husband, and the exploration of a foreign country. In fact, it was not real. But I was under such an illusion. I had no idea of what was lying in wait for me. While waiting in Turkey, my husband met with a man named Abu Ghazi. He met with him again, and each time I did not accompany him. They would talk and I had no idea about what. Of the 48 hours we waited in Turkey, only 3 were spent exploring the city. And those 3 hours are to this day the most memorable hours of my life. I would relive these hours the most when I was in Syria. Whenever I got exhausted and irritated, I would reminisce about those moments and fantasize about experiencing them again.
نعيشهم مرة أخرى.